From viral image of Donald Trump to the explosive fight between Firecracker and Soldier Boy, Ryan taking down Homelander to V1 mystery. This season was absolutely wild. But beyond the chaos, there were so many hidden details and subtle moments that most people didn't even notice. Starting with Ryan and Homelander fight. Ryan calls him out about the physical assault on Becca. Homelander denies it, but for the first time in the show's history, someone uses Homelander's own signature power against him. Homelander can hear heartbeats. He uses that ability to detect fear and deception in others. Ryan does the exact same thing to him. He listens to Homelander's heartbeat while Homelander lies, and he knows. It doesn't end well physically for Ryan. Homelander responds with overwhelming force, but the psychological inversion is complete. Afterward, Homelander stands in front of a painting, a recreation of Emanuel Lewitz's famous Washington crossing the Delaware, except Washington has been replaced with Homelander himself. Then episode opens in Sudzha, a real town in Russia. And here's the first layer of real-world commentary the writers are embedding. The show has already established that Vought's Homelander-controlled government is publicly pushing a narrative that the US and Russia are friends now. Soldier Boy is even being used as proof, the idea being that he was never a Russian asset, but actually a collaborative player all along. Classic authoritarian propaganda, but that opening scene contradicts that narrative immediately. If the US and Russia are allies, why are Russian special forces raiding an American intelligence facility? Because the government is lying. Simple. The show is holding up a mirror to how authoritarian regimes gaslight their citizens through contradictory messaging, and most people never connect the dots. What actually stops that Russian squad is Ryan, who has been hiding at this location. He eliminates the entire unit completely alone, and the camera lingers on his face afterward. He's clearly disturbed. The question he keeps circling back to, am I becoming my father? That question is the thematic spine of Ryan's entire arc this season, and I think it's one of the most carefully constructed what-if scenarios the show has ever attempted. Think about it this way. Homelander's story is the tragedy of a child raised as a product. Vought manufactured him from the embryo stage, injected with Compound V before he even drew his first breath. He never had a choice. Ryan, on the other hand, was born a natural soup. No injection, no corporate manufacturing, and he ran. After Becca's death, he was positioned at a crossroads. Become Homelander 2.0 under his father's grooming, become a weapon for Butcher and Grace, or escape the entire machine altogether. He chose to escape. And yet here he is in a Russian black site doing exactly what Homelander would do, eliminating threats with no oversight, no accountability. The tragedy is that running from the system doesn't mean the system didn't shape you. That's the writers underlining Ryan's psychology in real time. He's trying to reject the expectations placed on him by Vought, by Homelander, and by the boys, but his actions keep betraying his intentions. Now let's talk about the biggest lore revelation of the episode, V1. Dr. Samir explains that V1 is the original iteration of Compound V, highly potent, catastrophically unstable, and the reason it only worked on a handful of test subjects. We're told the 5 successful V1 subjects were Soldier Boy and 4 others, those who received V1, the virus that Samir engineered to kill Compound V soups, cannot bind to V1 molecules. The molecular structure is just different enough to confer immunity. This is why Soldier Boy survived. And this creates a major chess piece for the rest of the season. Homelander, who is not a V1 subject, he received a later, refined version of Compound 5 injected during the embryonic stage, is terrified by 2 things simultaneously. First, he's not immune to the virus. Second, a super who's visibly going gray. Soldier Boy twists the knife by pointing this out directly, suggesting that Homelander will grow old and feeble while Soldier Boy continues to lead the 7 indefinitely. So now Homelander has 2 reasons to desperately hunt for V1: immunity from the virus and a potential path to biological immortality. Here's where my favorite theory of the episode comes in. Ryan is the only naturally born soup in this universe. No Compound V injection of any kind. So Samir's virus, which specifically targets Compound V molecules in the bloodstream, Ryan might have 0 of those molecules to target. He could be completely immune to the virus that would kill every other soupy on the planet. The show hasn't confirmed this yet, but the setup is too deliberate to ignore. The boys also learn that V1's documented experiments were conducted at Dachau, a real location in Germany where a Nazi concentration camp operated during World War II, and where prisoners were subjected to horrific medical experimentation. In the show's universe, Dr. Vought, a German scientist who later defected to the American side, continued his experiments on U.S. service members, which mirrors the documented history of unethical U.S. military medical trials that occurred through much of the 20th century. All records of the Dachau 1 experiments have been destroyed, except that in the files Stan Edgar hands over, there are repeated references to a decommissioned facility called Fort Harmony. Back stateside, Soldier Boy is officially inducted into the Seven, and the dynamic here is fascinating. Homelander clearly invited him in as a calculated move. Soldier Boy's legend gives Homelander legitimacy, a mythological foundation for his regime. But the second Soldier Boy starts basking in the crowd's adulation, Homelander can't help himself. He blurts out that Soldier Boy is his father, hijacking the moment to make it about his own identity. Watch Soldier Boy's face when that happens. There's a flicker of genuine irritation. He was enjoying his spotlight, and suddenly it's been absorbed into Homelander's narrative. That tension escalates in their private conversation afterward. Soldier Boy confronts Homelander about the Compound 5 virus situation, and Homelander predictably denies everything. But here's where the show gets visually clever. The camera frames Soldier Boy above and centered with Homelander below him and off to the side. That's not an accident. The visual language is communicating the power hierarchy clearly. At this moment in the story, Soldier Boy is above Homelander. Not metaphorically, literally above him on screen. And Soldier Boy makes that power imbalance verbal too. He calls Homelander pathetic and dismisses him completely. The irony here is rich because Homelander spent 4 seasons doing exactly this to every member of the Seven beneath him. He ridiculed them, humiliated them, reminded them constantly who held the real power. And now he's getting a taste of his own medicine from someone even stronger who is functionally immortal. For the first time, Homelander can't do anything. He can't laser eye Soldier Boy out of existence the way he did A-Train. He's stuck absorbing the humiliation. Meanwhile, the most emotionally complex storyline of the episode belongs to Butcher and Ryan. We learn that Ryan and Zoe are in contact, and Zoe has been trying to get Ryan to help her track and kill Butcher. Ryan won't do it, and in a quietly devastating detail, when Butcher actually shows up nearby, Ryan can smell him with his super senses and deliberately says nothing to Zoe. He chooses not to hand Butcher over. That is not the choice of someone who's moved on from that relationship. The two eventually end up at a bar, and Butcher lays it out cold. Use yourself as a delivery mechanism to get the virus near Homelander. Ryan might not survive it. Butcher is asking a teenager to make a suicidal sacrifice. The show makes sure you feel the full weight of this by drawing a comics-rooted parallel. Butcher gives Ryan a beer in this conversation, and that mirrors a moment from the source material where Butcher's abusive father gave young Billy a beer, and here Butcher is unconsciously replaying that same dynamic with Ryan, using alcohol and manipulation to draw someone younger and more vulnerable into a violent destiny. Butcher tells Ryan that killing Homelander is his destiny, that he's the only one who can do it. He gives Ryan a hero complex on purpose. And here's the darkest irony. A few scenes earlier, Homelander's hallucination told him that immortality and godhood are his destiny. Two characters being manipulated, one by his own fractured psyche, one by a grief-broken man who's running out of options, into believing that violence is their cosmic purpose. Ryan ultimately agrees. His reasoning is two-pronged: justice for his mother's assault, and the belief that dying to stop Homelander would at least prevent him from eventually becoming Homelander. He'd rather die as a sacrifice than live as a monster. That's a lot to carry. He's a kid. Two moments deserve specific attention before we hit the predictions. First, Kimiko lets Zoe and Samir escape. When Samir discovers Zoe is alive, he destroys the virus and runs. Frenchie tries to stop them, but Kimiko intervenes and lets them go. Her reasoning? She grew up as a weapon. She was manufactured into a tool for others' agendas, shaped by violence and pointed at targets. She sees Zoe being set up for the exact same trajectory by Stan Edgar, who, for all his grandfatherly warmth towards Zoe, routinely uses her as a means of intimidation and leverage. Kimiko recognizes the pattern because she lived the pattern. Letting them go is the most human choice she's made in seasons. Second, the conversation between MM and Stan Edgar about what the real enemy actually is. Stan makes the argument that Vought isn't the final boss. Soups aren't the final boss. The actual undefeatable force is capitalism, the machinery of profit, supply, and demand. You destroy Vought? Something else fills the vacuum. The market will always commodify the next thing. The show then does something almost breathtaking in its audacity. It points out that Amazon, the company streaming this show, is itself part of that same machine. It's a fourth wall break that few major productions would have the nerve to execute at this scale. Let's talk about the sequence that is going to live in the internet's brain for a long time. Homelander begins hallucinating Madame Stillwell, his former handler and one of the few people who ever gave him the nurturing attention he craves. The first signs were seeded in episode 2 during A-Train's funeral, where Homelander experienced a flash of godly light and heard a female voice. In episode 3, it happens again when Soldier Boy receives his commendation and the crowd's attention goes somewhere other than Homelander. The pattern is precise. These hallucinations are triggered specifically when someone else is receiving the love and adoration Homelander believes belongs only to him. His narcissistic injury produces a psychological break that manifests as a divine visitation from the mother figure who validated him. By mid-episode, the hallucination becomes a full conversation, and what Stillwell says, remember this is Homelander's own subconscious speaking through her, is genuinely chilling. She tells him it's time to ascend, to become immortal, to become a god who receives all of humanity's love. She tells him he deserves more devotion than Jesus because he saves more people. The fact that he saves fewer people than almost any other super in the show's history and has directly or indirectly caused an enormous number of civilian deaths makes this delusion particularly horrifying. He's not accessing reality. He's constructing a theological framework in which his own monstrousness is reframed as divine destiny. And then, this genuinely feels like the show had a direct line into the news cycle. Just before the episode aired, a prominent political figure posted an AI-generated image of himself depicted as Jesus. The Boys Season 5 finished filming in 2025. The writers could not have known this would happen at the precise cultural moment the episode dropped, but the parallel imagery is uncanny. A powerful figure comparing himself to a divine savior using visual symbolism to reinforce that self-mythology. The show has been doing this kind of reality mirroring for 5 years. This might be their most pointed coincidence yet. Stillwell's final instruction to Homelander: eliminate everyone who is unfaithful to him or who hates him. When only his devotees remain, he will be a true god. This isn't new psychology for Homelander. Season 2 showed us his fantasy of mass executing Americans who turned against him, but now that impulse has been elevated to a theological mandate he's delivering to himself. That's the full episode 3 breakdown. This season is doing something genuinely ambitious. Drop your own theories in the comments. Like the video and subscribe.